So here's a wild thought for you. What if the biggest threat to a revolutionary idea isn't its fiercest enemy, but its most loyal follower? Yeah, let's dive into that. Because today we're exploring this really powerful and kind of counterintuitive concept from Friedrich Nietzsche: why the very people who claim to love a teacher's work can end up being the ones who destroy it. And this quote from Nietzsche just gets right to the heart of it. What is it that the teacher and his cause are most often injured by? By the best qualities of his disciples. I mean, that sounds completely backward, right? How can the best qualities, things like loyalty, passion, devotion, be the source of the problem? Well, that's the fascinating puzzle we are going to unpack. So let's get into our first section here: a teacher's tragedy. See, Nietzsche doesn't frame this as some kind of malicious attack. It's more of a quiet, ironic tragedy, a brilliant idea being unintentionally suffocated by the very hands that are trying to hold it up. To really get this, you have to understand what a new philosophy is for Nietzsche. He calls its birth an eruption of thought. And just think about that word eruption. It's not neat, it's not organized, it's messy, it's dangerous, it's alive and raw. It's not some tidy set of rules you can memorize, it's a volcano of new insight. And this is where the tragedy really hits. It happens when that fiery, fluid eruption gets captured. The followers, in their attempt to preserve it, they end up corrupting it. They flatten out all its dangerous curves and turn it into something safe, predictable, and totally rigid, a dogma. Nietzsche actually used the word disgust to describe how he felt about this process. And this comparison just lays it all out perfectly. On the left, you've got the teacher's original idea, the noble eruption. It's dangerous, it's a festive discovery, a fluid philosophy that you have to earn through your own struggle. And then on the right, well, that's what it becomes in the hands of the undesirable disciple, a common dogma. It's safe, it's practical, and it's boiled down to a boring set of unconditional duties that you can just possess without any real work. It's basically the difference between climbing the mountain yourself and just buying a postcard of the view. So why? Why does this happen? What's actually going on in the mind of a follower that leads them to do this? In our second section, let's really get into the psychology of this destructive kind of discipleship. Here is Nietzsche's core diagnosis, right here. The undesirable disciple. They're not really on a noble search for truth. They're actually running away from something, their own intellectual poverty. They feel this void, this weakness, this inability to create their own values, and they're just desperately looking for some outside authority to come in and fill that emptiness for them. And when you break down their motivations, it gets really interesting. This kind of person is looking for a higher command to just tell them what to do. They hide their own emptiness behind the teacher's words like a theatrical mask. And they have what Nietzsche calls a lust for possession. They want to own the truth, to have it as a possession, instead of struggling to discover it. It's all driven by vanity, by ego, and by this very deep, very human desire for a protector. So, and this is the really critical part, this isn't a path to freedom at all. They might think they're breaking free from old rules by following some radical new teacher, but in reality, they're just swapping one set of shackles for another. They're using the teacher's words to avoid the terrifying, difficult work of actually creating their own values. Okay, so we get the psychology, but what's the actual damage here? Section 3, the corruption of genius, is all about how this mindset actively harms the teacher's original work. And the damage is huge. The follower's blind, unthinking devotion completely misrepresents the original idea. Think about it. A philosophy that was all about individual strength and courage suddenly looks weak, herd-like, and conformist from the outside. For Nietzsche, this causes a huge loss of dignity for the teacher, who's now being judged through the warped lens of their weakest followers. Which brings us to this really wild question. If you have a world-changing idea, who should you be more afraid of? The person who attacks it with everything they've got, or the person who agrees with it blindly, without a single question? And here's Nietzsche's shocking answer. He would much rather have a wicked opponent. Why? Because the enemy, just by fighting so hard against it, is actually paying the idea a strange kind of compliment. They recognize its power. They see its danger. They take it seriously. The opponent is engaging with the idea's true, disruptive nature, while the undesirable disciple is just trying to make it harmless. So this is what he really means by corruption. It's the disciple's laborious efforts to explain and systematize the idea that actually murders its spirit. They take something that was a joyful, festive discovery and they turn it into this dull, utilitarian tool, basically just a way to feel safe and comfortable. They domesticate the wild beast of a thought. Okay, so if this kind of following is so toxic, what's the alternative? Well, Nietzsche doesn't just point out the problem, he offers a solution. And in section 4, we're going to explore that solution, the path of the free spirit. And this right here is the absolute key to the whole thing. The goal isn't to become a better kind of follower. The goal is to stop being a follower altogether. Nietzsche's ideal is the free spirit, someone who uses a teacher as a catalyst, as a stepping stone, but never ever as a final destination. And he basically gives us a roadmap for this journey. First, you have to eventually shed the teacher, moving beyond their ideas. Second, you have to walk your own plank, which means taking your own scary intellectual risks. Third, through that process, you become who you are, an act of real self-creation. And finally, in doing all that, you find and express your own will to power, your unique drive to grow and overcome. This quote just captures the whole thing perfectly. The journey of real discovery, what Nietzsche calls the gay science, his philosophy of joyful wisdom, it's not a group project. It's a solitary, courageous act. You have to build your own bridge, your own plank into the unknown, and then have the guts to walk it all by yourself. And that brings us to our final and maybe most powerful section. For Nietzsche, this isn't just a philosophical game. This is about the entire purpose of your existence. Why is it so crucial that you must, eventually, overcome your teachers? Because, as it says here, the true object of existence isn't to find safety and comfort hiding in someone else's shadow. It's to step into the light and do the difficult, incredible work of creating yourself. The disciple seeks comfort. The free spirit seeks growth. And here is the ultimate beautiful paradox. The greatest compliment, the highest honor you can pay a great teacher, is not to just agree with them for the rest of your life. It's to use their teachings to become so strong that you can overcome them, that you develop your own sense of power and see even further than they did. That is their real legacy. So we end with this question, which really turns all this philosophy into a direct personal challenge for you. It's not about if you'll learn from others. Of course you will. It's about how. Whose wisdom will you take in, not to just repeat it, but to use it as a foundation to build something that is uniquely yours? Whose shoulders will you stand on? Not to rest, but to see a horizon that even they couldn't imagine.